up in just outside of Concord, New Hampshire, and the capital of the state, and it was, oh gosh, it was such a mix of wonderful local things. There was plenty of music, mom and pop sort of shops, and you think of quaint New England, it's the picture speaks for itself. Little brick and mortar shops, so you can go down the street. We had this one local music store, Strings and Things, and all those guys would go out in the community, play different shows. On my drum set here, this splash cymbal and this China cymbal I had picked up from a colleague of mine. Both of them were actually used by Def Leppard on tour. Yeah, Keene State College down there. I went to school for music education, and I also went through the music composition program there and took a bunch of classes, and I almost got a second major through there, but things didn't work out the way we were going through a new accreditation system, so lots of different changes to curriculum, and by the time my schooling was up, I was just happy to get my music education degree and move on to the next stage. So with all the recording I do, you're working with a room that has all flat surfaces. There's a lot of sound that's generated when you're playing live, saxophone, drums, whatever you're doing in here. And the sound's going to be bouncing off everything, echoing. It's going to make the room sound not going to sound very well. So I'm still in the process of setting up these foam panels, but what it helps to do is reduce the feedback, in a sense, the echoing, the bouncing of all the sound around the room. So while I have my microphones set up, whether I'm doing a voice line, if I'm playing an instrument into one of the recordings on the computer, you'll be able to hear the echoing, you'll be able to hear the room in any of the recordings. And so these sound panelings will help dry it out to make it not as echoey. So that whole wall will be finished up. I have more pieces to put into corners for bass, but it's just a way to help make the room not sound so echoey, big, open, boomy. It's to control the sound a little bit more. I got into music just the same as anyone else in my age that did not do music outside of the school curriculum. My first experience with music in a proper sense was 4th grade in elementary school. 4th and 5th grade were the first years that you could get into with instruments. We were singing a lot before then, but the first time with instruments was 4th grade, and I always wanted to play the saxophone. My late cousin and another cousin played saxophone, and I remember enjoying just how it looked, all that, but I was told by my teacher I couldn't play saxophone. It's kind of an education thing where if you have 30 kids that want to play saxophone, you're not going to have your clarinets, you're not going to have your flutes, you're not going to have all the other instruments.
So they were like honing.
So in a sense, they're like, well, we start everyone on clarinet. And at the time, I was heeing and hawing a little bit about it, but I actually really enjoyed playing clarinet, which was my first instrument. And then in going into 5th grade, we actually had started up a jazz band at my elementary school, which, looking back on it, obviously elementary school kids playing doo-wop jazz, it's an experience for the parents, but we all have to start somewhere, and it's a great time. It was a lot of fun. First exposure was saxophone, but I didn't end up playing it until going into high school. I almost forgot. I enjoyed playing clarinet so much through schooling that I was just before I went up to high school, I was still playing clarinet. teacher from my high school who called down to the middle school and said, "Hey, we need some saxophone players." And my teacher at the time turned to me and asked if I wanted to play saxophone. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I want to play saxophone." So I picked that up for high school, and then that became my primary instrument all the way through college. So I play alto sax in the show primarily. This year I also get a chance to play my clarinet. But this horn right here I picked up when I was in college. And this one is a 1929 Aristocrat alto saxophone. And I remember finding this online, and I thought that it was kind of meant to be. Like, I had to have the saxophone because this was made the same year that my now late grandfather was born. And so as soon as I heard about that, I have to buy and get this. And as soon as I got it back home, I remember sitting down on the couch playing it. We had a dog, a yellow lab at the time, and when you start playing an instrument, he starts singing along with you, and it was a great first experience, and I love using this horn. So I went to school as I want to be a good music teacher. I want to bring back my love and enjoyment of music to the classroom. And then after the first year or two, they have you go through a lot of classes that are not necessarily what you'd expect. Educational development, sociology, psychology, a lot of these classes, sciences, educational, beneficial classes that have
I'm sure it's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But it also makes you start thinking about what you're doing in so many different ways. And so I started re-looking at my love of music, and I started seeing the positives and the negatives of different teachers and how they taught, and started going through the mentality of it as a teacher. And so I started refocusing my attention, and when I was going through school, I had a few music teachers that I loved, but I also saw some other teachers that I knew were not the best of teachers. And so I started changing my mentality about it. I wanted to go, from that point going forward, I wanted to be the best teacher I could, not because of this book that I'm teaching the class off of. I want to be able to teach them that this is what we did. This is what people do on stage. They do out in the world. These are how the professionals play their instrument, as opposed to play page 46 because this is what we're doing. And so I started trying to learn as many instruments as I could. Because I didn't want to be the teacher that says, play the flute this way because that's what this image says and that's what this book says. I want to say, play the flute this way because these are the techniques that I learned, that my friends learned, my colleagues learned. Oh, and here's some tricks to get this tone going the right way. Same thing, saxophone, flute, clarinet, percussion. I started reaching out, especially in college. I took advantage of all the ensembles that I could. I joined the orchestra. I started singing in a bunch of different, there was a select choir that was just Baroque music as well as some modern groups. We did a barbershop quartet, saxophone ensemble, percussion ensemble. I jumped into the brass ensemble. So I was doing everything I could to not only learn how to play the instrument through my degree, but to be able to then say, I can step up my ability, I can play these things because I want to perform and teach at that level. And then, of course, learning all the instruments, I started falling in love with being on stage and performing, and that also turned into, now not only do I know how to play the instruments, but now I want to get real-world experience performing, playing the instruments, to then take back to the classroom. And I'm sure one day down the road, I'd love to see myself back in a classroom, but at this point, I'm loving being on stage, performing, entertaining people. Some of the big ones are to work with a group, how to work with people that are at different abilities and levels. I was a freshman in high school in a band full of seniors that had more experience than I do. I was also a senior in high school with freshmen underneath. So you're always going to be working with people of varying abilities, whether it's in music, outside of music, wherever it is. You have to work with people you don't necessarily like. You are going to have to work with best friends. You're going to have to work with boyfriends or girlfriends that you are either with or have broken up with and still have to work with in those. So there's a lot of growing up that you get to experience in the performing world. And as much as I love it, I can't say it's been easy either. You get to the performing world, and then I know some people that are set. They get paid regularly, they've got a wonderful job, whether it's in teaching or performing around the country, the world. I also have people that get a paycheck in 1 month. It's a good paycheck, but then they don't know when the next time they're getting a paycheck. So you have to worry about finances, you have to worry about management, but at the same time, along with those negatives, you get to see the way that music affects other people and how people flock to entertainment. This is a tuner that you can clip on to your guitar, and you can see this has been sitting here for a couple days. And what it actually does is you clip it on, and there's a couple different settings, but the one I usually use, it feels the vibrations of the instrument and can tune the instrument just by how it's vibrating, as opposed to trying to listen for the note, because I could be talking, someone else could be talking, someone else is playing an instrument, and so it could be very difficult for the tuner to distinguish between my instrument and someone else's. Yeah, I had no idea what to expect going into it. I had gone through college, and you all have a little ego when we're young. And going into it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great, this is going to be a lot of fun. And it was. There were some aspects of the living that I wasn't prepared for. Some people think cruise ship life is glamorous, but there are parts of it that are a struggle, small living situations. We don't eat the same food the guests do, so our food wasn't necessarily the best. So there were some of those negative aspects. But in my 20s, young, I get to travel around. The benefit of working the cruise ships is you're going around to these beautiful locations, wherever the cruise ship is going. I was mostly in the Caribbean, and I worked ships for 6 years. And being able to say that, I was in St. Thomas on Saturday and Cozumel on Sunday, and then in the Florida Keys on Tuesday, and to be able to travel and see as much of the world as you can in that environment, it was wonderful. Because then you get to meet local people, you get to meet people on the ship from all over the world, you get to meet musicians that get to teach you new things that you never would have thought of. I got a chance to sit down with a Brazilian saxophone player, and we were working on some technique stuff, and just the way he talked about things, I was just blown away. I'd never seen certain aspects of music from that side. Incredibly thankful for all the work the office does. I know Laura wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, and I know that I'd like to think that everyone has said highly spoken highly about her.
Oh, yeah. She's wonderful. I'm very happy that she's here.
Yeah. I think we're just happy that we can bring that to the theater. There's one song I fell in love with in college that no matter how many times I listen to it, I will still feel it. And that's Rachmaninoff's Vocalise, which is just this one of the most beautiful and emotional songs I've ever heard. And yeah, maybe it's not nice beach music if I'm stranded on a desert island, but it talks to more than just your mind. I started listening to it because I had just gotten into Stravinsky, Rite of Spring, I knew in high school. But I never really sat down to listen to it. I remember growing up as a kid, one of my favorite movies to watch was Fantasia, Disney's Fantasia. And they have all those classical songs, all with, you got Mickey with the sorcerer outfit and dancing and broomsticks, all that. Yeah, and I loved that. I loved listening to that. I loved watching it. But that had Rite of Spring in it. That was the whole sequence of the dinosaur stretch. And I was fascinated by that growing up. And so when I got a chance to actually sit down and learn it and analyze it, look at the music and go through it, I was entranced. And at that point, I started looking at more Russian composers, because Stravinsky, even though that was done in Paris, he was from Russia. Instrument? Piano. As much as I love playing saxophone, playing all the other instruments, and I get to play saxophone and clarinet in the show, piano, you can just do so much with it. It speaks volumes and it has such a range. Bruno Mars is a great example of a modern group that you hear their horns and it's just, they're on fire. They're burning up the stage and people are loving it because it's got such a good mix of kind of a modern take on R&B with a little bit of pop stuff going into it, but then you have the horns backing them up and it's just such a good combination. Harmonica. As weird as that sounds, it's I can sit there and play chords on the harmonica, but getting the individual notes on the harmonica, I just haven't been able to get it done. So one of the things that I do outside of the theater is I do some recording just on my own, and I'm actually the composer for a video game company that one of my best and oldest friends started a few years back, Vision Games. I can give you a little teaser, but you have to look a little bit more for some of our product coming out. Alright, that's about as far as I can get. Legally. I came down to the Alabama Theater. It was November of 2017. Started the 2018 season. I was still on cruise ships at the time. I just finished up my second contract on board the Freedom of the Seas, Royal Caribbean. And I was slated to go back. At the time, I'd spent 6 years on cruise ships. I was looking for a little bit of a change. And a friend of mine was actually from the area, and his old music teacher had sent him a message about theater. And luck had it for me that my friend was actually moving to New York City that coming year, and so he had to pass up the job, but he actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this job opportunity. I know you've been looking for a job on land, and so yeah, I'll check it out. I gave them a call, sent some of my information. They sent some information back. I'm like, I'm doing the same sort of work. I'm working shows. I get to perform every night, and I get to be on land. I can have my car. I can do all the things I want, plus be able to still perform. And so I jumped on the opportunity. I reached out to a few people in the office, and we had a few back and forths. And I was actually in Canada at the time, so I had to give one of the ladies in the office a landline to Canada to call to contact me, so that I could get the call that they wanted to have me at the theater. So it was just a kind of a funny, chaotic back and forth, but I'm so happy that I got a chance to get down here for that.